Too smart for some of us.
Well, you know, the lighting system, the HVAC system, everything that's supposed to be so automated, it's not, you know. So of course, this morning,
Coffee and
the entire building is 59 degrees.
okay,
You guys ready?
we're ready. I don't know if we need the microphone, if we can.
Yep.
Everybody hear?
I think you need them,
Yeah, you have
you need
to
them
use
for
them.
YouTube,
Oh, for the YouTube,
or the Facebook, is it YouTube or
whatever.
Facebook? Oh, it's both?
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll hand you mine.
Thank you.
So, who wants to go first? What questions you have?
You might as well go first.
Yeah, we just need you to go first.
Oh, no, I may need a sidebar with
Oh, okay.
Mr.
Then
Schlegel.
just say,
Okay, I'll go first.
We own the property at the end of Haskell Lane, my sister and I.
Okay.
It's a farmland, it's about 30 acres. Previously, we had 108.5 some acres. We sold to Penn Hills, our family. Now I'm having problems with trails, wanting to go through there. And I've also had the bikes, I also have the sewage line going through there.
I should really get to this.
So,
I'm standing there holding the
so anyhow, a few weeks ago, it was the week before I talked to you after a council meeting, I had fellas from the Trans Systems enter the property. They were we have a cell tower, and they're flying drones around. And never asked us to come on the property or anything, and my son chased them off for me. And now, yesterday, I went down to the bottom of the hill and I see red flags all along where they want to put the trail. So I don't know who put them, and that's what I was wondering, if the borough knows who was down there, who put them. Are they, is it part of them again? I called the fellow, this is the letter they gave my son, is after he told him to leave.
That's it.
And,
This is about the VFP.
VFP,
right, correct. I'm right out of Oakmont, like from Oakmont area, you would go into our areas next. And we have,
It's across the street from Daniel's apartment.
Yeah.
right, it's like 2,800.
Well, you said you have a cell tower, you can't stop people from going back to the cell tower for maintenance, you probably have the right.
Right,
Okay, but others do not have that.
right, we have a sign, a whole big fence up and stuff, going back in.
I thought they weren't supposed to do that kind of stuff.
This will be the second time that was it. I
The
called,
issue is that letter was given to my son, my husband after the fact.
after we told them
They
to leave.
said they gave it to the railroad because that's who owns the property, which that's not who owns the property.
We went to court for that. We do own that right away. The old railroad. And the other thing is they're wanting to put this trail through, and if you were to put the train back through there, you couldn't do it because it's washed out. So now they're talking about putting the trail through on the old railroad, where the old railroad was. It's impossible. And the thing of it is, I have a bank coming down, and if you disturb that bank, I'm gonna be sliding on the top, which the kids in some areas through the ATVs have chased, and I've had 100 problems there. Have also caused some of it too, that bank, whole hillside to fall in. So I don't know who it is that was back there. I'd like to find out who is. I called this fellow here, he hasn't returned my call.
Yeah, the entrance to your property is, we're talking either Penn Hills or Oakmont, down there off of, what is that, Hamel Road coming down there?
I'm off Haskell.
Off the Haskell from up top.
Up top, and then we have a road that goes down
Okay,
from there.
all right.
The Oakmont, what park is that, the one in Oakmont? Is that?
Oh,
Riverside Park.
Riverside, yeah.
Yeah, that goes, and there's a sign up saying you're now entering private property, turn around.
Yeah.
We were
Oakmont
down
did
there
do
yesterday,
that.
people did turn around. How far away is the park? I mean, the bike trail,
When you say how far away is it, do you
Like
mean
planning
physically or
years.
time-wise?
time-wise?
They're probably 10 years.
They do have another meeting July 13th at Penn Hills, the municipal building at 6 o'clock.
So, I mean, is there a reason why they
It's
haven't
still-
come to, like, ask about the property or anything in Plum? Is it still planning or?
So the project itself, even though Plum is involved in it in the sense that this group of municipalities has included Plum in the project because they need Plum, because the county goal is to get from the river to Boyce Park.
Right.
So they obviously they can't get to Boyce Park without going through Plum.
Yes.
So without being too negative regarding the people or the project that are involved in it so far, the staff here and council, the officials here, were very disappointed in how this whole project has taken place, because we weren't really part of the project. Some of the municipalities took more of the reins than others, and some of the people involved in the project, not necessarily the municipal employees and different, because there's 4 municipalities obviously involved. They just, I guess there's really no other way. They started doing things without getting permission from all the municipalities, without even notifying everybody. So some of the first notifications that we had here, the staff had notification about some of the activities that this group was doing was actually from some of you all. Because they didn't really disseminate a lot of the information to all the municipalities, or at least to us anyway. So we're still sort of behind the 8 ball with respect to what the true plans are here. What I can tell you is this, is that there's the 3rd Thursday of every month, there's a Teams meeting, a virtual meeting that takes place that the staff here participates in. We did ask the team to come out, this VOPP team to come out here and meet with us and show us where they think conceptually where this trail might go. And so we talked about it. They showed us maps and showed us, where they think they might be able to put a trail in somewhere. But it's all still very, very preliminary. They did get a grant, a pretty significant grant, by the way. It's a
Over 10
$7
million.
grant. And that's how they were able to hire trans associates. We have notified trans associates on more than one occasion they need to stop doing what they're doing, telling people what they're telling people. Because they've told other people in the community in Plum, and I'm sure they've done it in other communities as well, like, this is where we're gonna do this. No, as far as I know, well, no communities have approved anything at this point. No preliminary concepts have been approved, that have been presented to anyone, as far as I know. I know nothing has been presented to Plum. The meeting that we had that I referenced a few seconds ago was just simply sort of some concepts and conceptual ideas about where things might happen, but I have not seen a map. I have no idea what their specific proposed alignment is at this time.
There's a map on their website.
We have repeatedly told them, we've reached out to some of the other municipalities that were sort of taking the lead on this and said, you need to tell trans associates to stop representing themselves as, in the manner that they're representing themselves, because they keep going to people's property and saying, this is where we're gonna do this. And they also sent out letters, I believe. Wasn't it, Mayor, a while ago, they sent out letters? Because the last one of these that we had, some of you were here and showed us the letters that you got the last time. This is going to be the alignment of this.
Let me ask the question here then. I'm just gonna make an assumption that this trans associate is doing it to get the money. Do we know who applied for the grant? Was it the county that applied for the grant for it?
It was the municipalities collectively. We participated in the grant application. Council adopted a resolution to apply for the grant. And it's the county, the State Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, and the 4 municipalities that have all been participating in this project at this point.
Is that possible to contact the state or the county, the conservation, Department of Conservation, and what is that, Natural Resources?
DCN area.
Yeah. To say, hey, they gotta cease this is going on. Is that, I mean, I'm just asking.
Well, it's not that they need to cease and desist what they're doing. In general, it's they're not doing, the things that they should be doing or might be doing there, and that's just not doing properly. For example, before they enter people's property, they need to be, be notifying
This
people,
is
not
the
just,
second time.
yeah.
Well, what they said was they did notify the people that own the property,
Yeah,
the
that's-
railroad, but the railroad doesn't own the property. That's where the issue is.
Well, that's in your specific property, but we know they've been on other people's properties and they haven't notified people.
Now, does Plum Borough want the bike trail?
That's up to council to decide whether or not they want a, how, if and to what extent they want to participate in the project.
Mike brought that up in an executive session Monday after our work session, just to give us an update on it. Right now, again, we're so far out, we don't have a lot of the information to make a decision on it.
So they're not even gonna start digging for 10 years? You know what I'm saying?
Well, we don't know how long, but
I mean,
They've got to come up with a conceptual alignment, they've got to acquire right away, there's a lot of groundwork to be done before they can start doing anything, if in fact they ever, will be
well, the
successful.
trail,
And what about a meeting with all the homeowners in
They
Plum,
could do
like,
that.
because it's Plum's area is where they're going through the property more so than other areas, it's more of a public type thing, it seems, like
yeah,
through
like they're doing
Oakmont.
Allegheny River Boulevard, which they're gonna make a bike trail from there to through Oakmont, which they probably do need a bike lane. I don't know where they're gonna put it, if you're familiar with the area down there, but because there are a lot of bikes and, the city and stuff has.
they were talking down there along the river.
Yeah.
Theoretically, you're gonna be able to go from New Kensington to down to Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And then with branches going off in various municipalities, like up to Boys Park. But all that is right now, as Mike said, it's been all conceptual. They have not come to us. We've not sat down with,
Do they legally have to come to you? I mean, if the county says we're having a,
if they're gonna go through public, if they're gonna go through borough property, I assume they do.
So,
But
the,
yeah,
so
the homeowners.
if the county, any government entity that wanted to do a trail system, would have to negotiate, they wouldn't have to, unfortunately. They could go through eminent domain if they wanted to, which I would hope they wouldn't, but.
so they don't really have to tell you what they're doing, they can just do it.
But they have to tell you if you're going on your property.
Well, they don't have us as the property owner, that's the issue.
Well, we can work on that one, like, if you just give me information, we can work with the group and just say, listen, you have the wrong property owner listed here. We can provide them with information saying, this is the property owner.
We talked, I went to the first two meetings, the one in Boro I didn't know about it, right up on there. The architect, I did tell them what we owned, they took our name and number and said, anytime there's a meeting, we will get in contact with you.
And they did.
Yeah,
Well,
they-
if you're against it, they're not gonna invite
No,
you.
right.
I mean,
And we're definitely against, I've had a lot
we're
of
not
problems
against,
in that
we're
area.
not against the bike trail, we're just against them
Putting
putting
up
and taking more property, because Penn Hills, when they built Penn Hills Park, told her family, either you give it to us or we're taking, sell it to us or we're taking it, so.
So, I mean, how much does one family have to give?
Yeah.
With over 100 and some
They're supposed to
acres.
compensate you for the property you take.
Yeah, but you know what?
It's not market
I
value.
don't want the money for what they're doing, I just want them out of there.
Yeah, understood.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm also having a lot of problems down there, so I don't wanna add to it. And this is gonna add to it, more people, in fact, I had people come over where the fence is going into Haskell Lane, pick their bicycles up, men, these aren't kids, put their bicycles up and they wanna go down our dirt road to get down to see where this trail's all gonna be and ride down there before it's even there.
Can you, if they give you the information, we can get the lot and block number and notify that company, Trans Associates, or
Okay,
whatever it is,
yeah.
that
They haven't called.
they should be notifying you. But really, the borough isn't involved at this point, other than going to some of the meetings.
Yeah, so our assistant manager, Dave Saboshley, he's in charge of the community development department, which is our planning and economic development department. So he's been attending the meetings, the virtual meetings on behalf of the borough. But at this point, other than having a conceptual, and we asked for that meeting. We asked for the group to come out and explain to us, and it was based on the information, the feedback we were getting from the residents, excuse me. And other than that, attending a few meetings, we're just sort of trying to find out, you know, what's going on with the project, but Plum Boro has not been, say, involved in the project, but I guess we really haven't been involved in the project.
Well, where they have it lined up to go is on top of the storage line that they just put in.
Yeah.
Um,
A couple of years ago, yes.
And if you go walk that trail, walk back where that is, you get halfway back, you look, and you can already see the pipe from the erosion.
Well, if they're going over that,
And I asked them to come back and block it again, and they said no.
well, if they're going over that sewer line, that line is already, that's a right of way given to the municipal authority.
Right.
But they still need to notify the municipal authority.
And
they're
there's
gonna go over that
wetlands
line.
there that they're definitely wanting to go.
But
It's
that's,
not all I don't think the whole property is just the sewer line.
No. Well, it's the whole lot on the property almost.
well, right now, we're not gonna be able to solve your problem and stop it from going on.
Right.
However, we can
Yeah, I
notify.
guess, I was gonna say, what can we do for you now? I mean, obviously outside of,
Also,
making sure that they have you as the owner of record of the property, which we can
Me
certainly.
and my sister, and, I don't know, I think we got those red flags everywhere on the ground, you know how the gas
Yeah,
company puts up,
little
well, they
flag,
have red ones.
We're not real sure.
So I don't know if they did it,
She made
Yeah,
some phone calls yesterday,
but nobody called
and
back.
everyone said they didn't know anything about it, so the only thing left was.
Somebody put them down there, they're marking the trail, unless it was, they contact the Plum Municipal Authority if it's near the
She
sewer
said
line
a
you
lot,
put in.
a lot of this group is
It is?
just on their own.
It is,
Could
Okay,
they
they
think
but we
probably-
called them and they said no,
You called the municipal authority?
yeah,
We got too many, yeah,
Yeah.
we're trying to cross our conversation.
yeah.
I'm sorry, you asked the question.
I'll let
So
somebody,
what I was saying was, you said a lot of the people, are doing it on their own, kind of, not really going through whoever, you know. Could they think that that property is part of Penn Hills?
They shouldn't, I mean, you know, the information that we have available to us now, and especially a group like Trans Associate does, they really shouldn't, I mean, the county records that we use in our systems, the county has a disclaimer on there that the actual property lines are plus or minus 10 feet. So, I mean, they could think if they're along a property line, they could actually, you know what I mean? They could think they're on someone else's property if they're close, but if they're along the property line, maybe. But they should be able to identify, especially Trans Associates is a transportation engineering firm, that's what they do. They should be able to more accurately identify the property lines.
we go all the way around the edge of the creek from Oak.
And also across the creek.
Yeah, we have a little piece across the creek, very small.
Yeah, well, have we not answered your questions sufficiently?
No.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, this is the first I'm hearing about red flags.
I have another question. There was a rumor going around that Plum Boro might have to drop down to 2 fire companies
That's not true.
because of volunteers.
There's a problem
So-
with volunteers, but
Yeah, but I mean, they're gonna keep the 4, right, we have 4, right, Logan's, Unity, Holiday Park, and
We do currently have 4. We are looking at different models for emergency service provision in Plum, just because there are those issues. I mean,
Yeah.
in 1970, in the 70s, there were 270-some thousand volunteer firemen in Pennsylvania, and now there's less than 70,000. So, I mean, that's one of the problems that every municipality, and probably most of the country is dealing with right now, is having not having enough volunteers to show up at emergency events. So we are looking at ways to restructure the way we provide fire services in Plum.
But right now, there's no plan to take it down to 2 companies. 2 departments, I should say.
yeah.
Well, the companies are private companies, so the borough, they're private, they're separate entities, they're their own private entities. You know, the borough can't close a fire company any more than it could close the school district. It's not, they're separate and private entities. They can exist separately from the borough if they choose. The borough can't close them.
I didn't know that. I don't think the borough had everything to do with the fire departments. Honestly, I mean,
All 4 fire companies are separate volunteer fire organizations with their own, employer identification numbers. They're all separate entities legally. They're not borough departments.
oh, yeah, I didn't know that.
The borough contracts with, collectively, the 4 fire companies 20-some years ago formed something called the PFCA, which is the Plum Fire Chiefs Association, which is the group of all 4 fire companies. And the borough has contracted with all 4, with this PFCA over the years. And the contract just identifies how much tax dollars the borough will give each fire company and for what specific things. And then they obviously in exchange agree to provide emergency fire services for the borough.
And that's the same thing I get calls for people saying about, they have issues with the municipal authority, billing issues, whatever it may be. Like there's a water leak and nobody's come out to take care of it. Can't do anything about that. The only thing we share with the municipal authority is the first, it's the borough municipal authority. They're a utility company. They're totally separate. The only thing council does here is appoint their board of directors. We appoint the members to the board. Once they're appointed, hands off. But there's cooperation in effect. So that's not an issue. But people think because it's Plum Borough, it says Plum Borough, we own it. It says Plum Borough Fire Department. It's part of the borough and it is not. It's not explained. Okay? Other questions?
Just the VOPP, you mentioned that you,
Let me give you this, so we get it on the YouTube or on our website.
just the VOPP, you mentioned that you had a meeting on Thursday and they talked about concepts. Can you expand on what that means?
No, I did not mention that I had a meeting on Thursday. We had a meeting quite a while ago.
On a Thursday, on a Thursday, you had a meeting with them. Then I
The
think that
team.
was you a Friday. You didn't have a meeting with them at all?
No, we did. We asked the group to come out and present their plans to us. This was a
And
few
you said
months
it was
ago.
just concepts. So
Yeah.
Can you expand on what the concepts is that they?
Well, they just talked about proposed alignments and areas that they identified that they might be able to acquire property to establish a trail system.
Okay, so right behind my house is one of the key trail systems. They do have a map online, as they said. I know you said you didn't see a map. They have it online.
So what I'm saying is we have not seen anything official that we've been asked to review officially from this group. That's what there's been all kind of maps and things that they've been working on, but nobody has come to the borough and said this is an alignment that they've asked us to review or provide our input on officially.
Okay, so there's a 95-page, presentation out online. It shows everything they're talking about and why they're doing what they're doing. You guys haven't read that?
I personally have not known.
I think it's important to understand where you're going and what they're doing. How could you push back against something if you really don't know? Or why are you going to wait until something starts before you start to push back? I think now's the time.
Maybe they don't want to push back.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly.
I think it's what I'm hearing now. I think you guys get involved and say, hey,
I don't think that's accurate at all. I don't think the borough has weighed in on this at all, other than to say that they're willing to listen to what this group is going to propose in Plum. That's it. I wholeheartedly disagree. There has been no affirmative steps taken by anyone on the staff or on council to do anything other than to say, okay, fine, we'll listen.
Well, there's been steps to your constituents here. I mean, they've sent us letters. You've already been told, I know you mentioned that you've been told by other people who live in Plum that they're against it and why, and it showed you where they're gonna go with the bike trail. Was that out mentioned at all at the meeting that, there's some things that you can say, hey, wait, this just can't happen because this is people's property and you mentioned last time at the meeting I was at that you guys would look into it. That doesn't sound like that happened, but I understand. you guys have
I
a
just
meeting.
explained that our assistant manager is attending the meeting every month.
Right.
I'm not personally, because I have a lot of other things going on to do as well, beyond this project and many, many others. But there is somebody here that is attending the meetings every month.
Yeah, Dave sent me an email back, giving me the status of it, but there was no content in that of, you know, what was said and what was going on, other than that it was just gonna continue. You guys signed up for the grant without knowing what was gonna happen.
No, I don't think that's an accurate statement. I don't think that's a fair statement either. We did not sign up for the grant not knowing what was going to happen. We signed up, the purpose of the grant was to investigate the possibility of doing something. That's exactly what the purpose of the grant was, and we knew exactly what we were signing up when council authorized it.
All right, well, there's 3 maps out online. The yellow map is the one that they want to go with primarily. So it's out there for everyone to look at. But you guys haven't seen it. Is that right?
I haven't. When you say you guys, who's you guys?
The borough.
The borough's not an individual entity. The
Whoever's
borough.
gonna say no or yes to that map. You guys, whoever.
So so I think what you're mistaken about is there's no person here that's going to say no or yes to the map. There's no process where any borough employee, myself included, gets to say no, not here, and yes here. This group has to negotiate rights of way, access to property, and even purchase property, and pull that project together. They're not going to send it to Plum and say, okay, bless this. We can be part of that, and we can help them. We can say, well, this is going to be problematic here, or we don't think this is a good idea here, which is what Dave Sabosely is doing as part of the project. But there is no process where any employee here gets to say, no, you can't put it there, put it here. That is a function of this group and how they are able to acquire access to the properties. If you gave them the right to access your property, I can't tell them they can't. And conversely, if you told them that they can't access your property, there's nothing I can do to say that they can.
Well, it says in the letter to use eminent domain, and I know you guys said at the last meeting that you don't normally allow eminent domain for such a feature. Is that true?
So
Is that just?
what the borough can do is either for the project as a whole, whether it wants to support the project in its entirety, oppose the project in its entirety, or oppose and or support different alignments or different components of the project. But the group doesn't need the borough to if the county and other groups want to acquire property through Plum, they can. They do. The county owns Boyce Park. The county has property in Plum Borough. They don't, there's no problem. You seem to be under the impression that the only thing the borough can do is exert political pressure for or against something in this case. There's no official process where we get a map and we say yes, or council says yes. They can support it, they can adopt a resolution in support of it, but if the county wanted to put a park in Plum and bought property, got access to it, as long as they're following the rules regarding construction and the Uniform Construction Code, the borough can't prevent those things. I mean, other than applying political pressure and saying, hey, we don't support this, and we would ask you to look elsewhere.
I was under the impression at the last meeting that if they did build the bike route, Plum Borough would be responsible for maintaining it, keeping it up, addressing ATVs and criminal things that might go on.
Any criminal activity or anything like that that occurs within municipal boundaries, other than the county parks, because the county has its own police department for that, would be the responsibility of the borough.
Maintaining the water fountains, the actual trail itself.
Well, that would be a function of any agreements that the borough agreed to. They can't just, any recreational features that somebody constructed in Plum or any community, if they didn't want to maintain those features, they'd have to have an agreement with us to maintain them. And that, council would have specifically agreed to. So if there was a water fountain somewhere on a trail system and they said, Plum Borough, if you'll take, will you maintain this and take care of this? If council said no, then the answer is no. But the fact that they can acquire property, acquire rights of way, or even condemn property through eminent domain doesn't require the borough's approval for any of that. We can oppose it. We can support or oppose the project as a whole, as I said, or different components of it, but there's no official approval process for a project like this. That's why our involvement in it, and we're waiting to see where they're heading with this and what their actual plan that they're going to propose. Once they've come up with some sort of plan where they think that's the plan that they want to proceed with, then council can wait and decide whether or not they want to support it in whole or in part or oppose it.
So, all the municipals, this is going through, Boro, Penhills, and Plum. The people who live there really can't do much about what they're planning or doing, even if they go to their boroughs and complain, or even if it doesn't look right.
There's a lot of things that can be done. Like you say, you can if so first of all, if somebody approaches you and says, I want to acquire right away in your backyard, you can say no. If someone says, I want to buy property from you, you can say no. If they go through the eminent domain process, you can fight that process. If you want to go, if the property, if any project were to be along your property or in the vicinity of your property, you can approach the borough council and ask them to oppose that, oppose it, like again, oppose it. Well, the only thing that the council can do is to sort of politically reach out to the other communities in the county and say, we don't support this project. When they go for funding for this project, because the funding that they have now is just for design, for conceptual design and engineering. So at some point, I assume they're going to be going out for funding for this project, and they're going to be applying for grants through the state. And if they are applying for grants through the state, and I'm just, a quarter of the alignment is in Plum, and Plum won't support the grant application, they're probably not going to get the grant. So it's that political process that will be able to oppose, prevent, support, modify, change this project if in any way that it does. But the point I'm trying to make is there's no specific process here where the borough staff and I sit down and go, yeah, that's fine, that's not. No, that doesn't happen that way.
And we're not anywhere near that part.
Yeah. And I know they have multiple.
We're nowhere near that.
I know they have multiple concepts about which way they want to go in this thing. And when we sat down with them, they talked about, and I can't remember specifically, it was months ago. They showed us a map on the big screens and said, we're thinking about this way and we're thinking about that. We talked about, pros and cons to every one of those alignments and gave our input on those proposals. So it's not like we're not involved in it, but there's nothing for anybody to do at this point. If you are opposed to it, just like any government action or any proposed legislation, just like anybody can do anywhere in the country, you can oppose however you see fit. You can go to council meetings and say, I would ask you not to support this project. You can get petitions. You can, just like everybody in the country does on all kinds of issues that they don't support or do want to support. But there's no official action to be taken right now. There's nothing to approve or reject at this point.
If I might suggest that the only thing you can do right now is put something in writing to Trans Associates that you are, with your objections, that you're opposed to. At least they got something. Okay, giving it to Oakmont or Penn Hills or Plum or any isn't going to do anything right now. Or notify, send the same letter. Again, they're going to tell you probably on the early stages, but send a letter to your representative saying, I oppose this, and state your reasons why you oppose it.
Okay,
That's what you can do now, but that's limited. You start building, they start building a problem.
Too.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, that's
Well,
something
if
like
Plum
that.
Borough apply for the grant, then they wants the bike trail.
No,
I
no,
mean,
They got a grant
I don't think that's an accurate statement, I don't think it's a fair statement.
well,
Plum Borough was asked by communities to apply for a grant to consider a concept.
Right.
That doesn't mean that council will ultimately say, yes, we're on board and we want to, at some point, if they're going to apply for funds for the actual bricks and mortar, right, for the construction of these things, right, and probably for
this
purchases.
grant that they had already none of it is allowed to be used for the,
This grant is just for planning purposes.
so they're not allowed to use any of that money to
Construct the trail.
construct the
No.
trail. So they have
I
to
wouldn't,
agree.
I don't know about whether or not they're not allowed to, but I guarantee you they're not going to, because they're gonna spend all the money on, they're gonna use all the money on the design stage of it, and the conceptual planning. So, if at some point this project gets to the point where they feel, this group feels they have the alignment that they want to pursue, and they want to start applying for grant funds, then I think if council does sign on to that grant, I think you're right. I think that is council saying, yeah, we approve of this project and this alignment, and we're in support of it.
I think a lot of people like the concept of a bike trail.
Mhm.
I mean, a lot of people ride bikes.
Which is what council agreed to,
Right,
the concept
I
of
get
one.
that. The issue is not in your backyard.
Well, that's up to,
You know what I'm saying? Like,
I understood.
you know,
there's people that are in favor of the concept that's nowhere near your property. They just want to use the track, all right? You, as a property owner, have a right to, again, I would send letters out saying, stating your objections from the very beginning. And every time they put another letter out there saying, I object,
that's all.
and let the state know, I object to this. And you're building a case, and it's gonna take time. But when you hear something or see something, I object, send it in. You become vocal, somebody is gonna come out and say, why the hell are you so vocal? What's your objection? And then you can point that out to them. But that's the thing you need to do, start doing now. And there's gonna come a time where you may have to go out and get the other property owners and say, we want a petition. And we're gonna come to council and we're gonna say, we don't want this, not as an individual, but as a group. And the same thing, the group sends it to the state.
I mean,
Not at that point right now, as Mike was saying, it is strictly an idea, a concept.
I think, and I'm sorry, I didn't get one, I caught your name. Sean. No, sorry, your name.
Melissa.
Melissa, I think what Melissa said is the most accurate statement. There are people in the community that like the idea or the concept of having a bike trail. And at this point, that's all that the borough has committed to, is investigating that possibility. That's it. I do understand that some of these proposals impact you more than others. I get that. But there is no, in order for anything to be done by anybody with respect to any sort of public project, whether it's recreation or sanitary lines, there's a process, there's a legal process that has to be completed to be able to have access to that property or to, unfortunately, to take that property. It doesn't just, there's not just some big map that council says, yes, this is it, and everybody's lost their property kind of thing. That's not how this happens. At this point, I think you said it best, council just signed on to the idea the idea of, yeah, we'll look into whether or not a bike trail could make sense in Plum. That's all that's been committed to by Plum Borough at this time.
Okay, thank you for enlightening me. However, they did send us letters, so they must have their sights set on a route. Would that be true?
They probably, they might, I don't know, they might have their sights set. I'm sure they do have their first, options in mind when it comes to these things. Of course, they have their ideas in mind of where they want this to be. I wouldn't doubt that. But that doesn't make it official in any way. It just means that that's where their hope,
I was just thinking, because last time I was here, Harry mentioned a lot of riff traffic goes on bike trails and different things like that, which would affect the borough and stuff like that. I just wanted to get your thoughts on where you guys are at as far as Hills, I think someone mentioned that Penn Hills had these VOPP meetings plugged in, did they? So I was.
We've done.
No, Penn Hills isn't having them, Penn Hills hosted one.
Okay.
So this group is putting the meetings on with Trans Associate.
So
It
they're not
wasn't,
inviting the people that are,
what's that?
they're not inviting the people that are directly affected, like you said, they're only inviting the people that want the bike trail.
They do have a Facebook page, but it has not been updated since January 2022, I think.
Let me just explain something too about just sort of how everything works here. And I'm not trying to pass the buck,
I get it.
but from my perspective and all the staff that report to me, if Borough Council says we're gonna do this project, then we will do this project. If Borough Council says we're not gonna do this project, then we won't do this project. My personal opinion about whether or not council asks me for my opinion, I'm more than happy to hear. The mayor will tell you, I'm more than happy to give my opinion. But at the end of the day, it's their decision. If it's a no on behalf of council, then staff will do that. If it's a yes, then staff will do that. There's nothing that could happen here administratively that will change this project one way or another. Other than maybe, recommendations and influence and advice. But at the end of the day, there's nobody other than the Borough Council, the 7 individuals that sit at that dais at the council meetings that get to make this decision. On everything, on the alignment, everything. But again, that's just in their supporting of it. If it's entirely possible that all of Borough Council could say, no, we do not support this project. But the county can still move forward with a project. We can't tell the county no.
Right.
Can they get the money without Borough?
Yeah, but I don't think it looks good. I think when they're applying to the state, the way these grant programs work is when they're applying to the state for funds, the state wants to make sure the people that ultimately approve the grant funds are our elected representatives in Harrisburg. So they don't want to approve a grant that's gonna, not be popular with, well, in this case, they're one of their largest communities
Yeah,
around.
but also
So
Allegheny County is a big county.
Allegheny,
So
you're
Allegheny
right.
County says, hey, we want the money for this bike trail. That really doesn't matter if Plum Borough wants it or not. Yeah.
There's some,
Maybe.
yeah. It's,
You
again,
might be right, but it's also possible that, because at the end of the day, there's a significant political element to this. That's all.
Well, they're proposing 3 different paths for the bike trail.
Yeah.
And it seems to me, in looking at it conceptually, probably picking the one that has the least resistance.
Right.
And
That's
the easiest
the
one
thing,
for them to construct, which might be, more of an obstruction of our properties than the other 2 trails. And all I'm asking is when you guys have these meetings and you're looking at these trails, might you suggest another, maybe a little more costly way, but a less intrusive way for the people who live in these areas?
Well, I think we have done that. I mean, I know when we initially had the meeting that I participated in, anytime you have projects like this, especially these trails projects, this is the obvious. Everybody, like you said, everybody likes the idea of a bike trail or a walking trail until it's in their backyard. So I've been doing this 30 years. This is not my first time involved in a trail project. And again, I want to just clarify, involved in a trail project just means I'm aware of it and I'm briefly updated on it.
So you didn't build the one in Mauriceville?
No.
Well, generally speaking, when you say not in my backyard, conceptually people think I'm not in this area. We're talking about literally not in my backyard.
No, I understand that. I do. I understand that.
It's not.
No, I think the phrase "not in my backyard" does always literally mean not in my backyard. But
Because I always think that it's not in that area,
well, to some people it probably does, quite honestly.
I mean, the problem with the property and I'm sorry, I was gonna say something. We have dirt bikes back there, we have quads back there, we have people, setting fires and having campfires and drinking and stuff already. And the police more or less said you have to catch the people, keep them on the property with their helmets off before you can even press charges. you know, they can't really chase people. Okay, that's what we were told.
I get calls all the time about bikes or
Right.
the ATVs.
You can't identify them. It's a
Our
big-
police go out there, they're gone.
Well,
If our police show up and they're there and they take off down the trail, our police can't follow.
Well, 2 bikes were broke down in front of my house,
Well,
and the
that's-
police stopped, asked them how, you know, if things were okay, and then they left, went on their merry way. Like, why didn't they get a ticket for being on Halton Road? You know, the bikes were on Halton Road.
Can't answer that
You
question.
know what I'm saying? The police kind of like blew it up. That was their chance to say,
Well, they don't know
hey,
that they were on your property, Mike. That's the point. They
well,
don't
no,
know.
but they were on Halton Road.
They were on Halton.
Their bikes, they're not allowed to be on public roads.
Yeah, but if they're not riding it, they're pushing it. They can go on public road and push it. They're physically not allowed
Okay,
to
so
ride
they
the
were
bike.
actually,
Riding
seeing the
on
cop
the
run
road.
away, the 2 got on their bikes.
We're kind of veering off the
Yeah.
topic, but I will say that with respect to that is that it has to be witnessed.
Yes.
Right. Well, I'm saying the bike trail is just gonna add more.
Well,
Like, is there gonna be
I
people to
can't
prevent bikes from riding, like
All 3
quads?
plants
you know?
are going through my property.
You know,
I'm doomed.
If 100 people sign a petition and send it to the state, I'm against this, yourselves. And 1,000 people send it to the state saying, I'm for it. They're not affected, you lose,
Right.
okay?
Absolutely.
But that's the political process. And I'm saying, start now sending those letters to the state, to your representative. I oppose this, state your reasons in there why. A couple months from now, send them another letter. It can be the same letter, just a different date. And you get other people adjacent to you to send it in, you start putting political pressure on.
I guess what we're asking for is some support here too, because, you know, you guys know a lot of riffraff comes with that type of
Oh, yeah.
thing. And is that really what you guys want? I mean, is that what you're addressing? Are you getting any funding to police that any better? You know, and then the maintenance of it and all that other kind of stuff. I know this is preliminary and conceptual at this point in time. But, you know, sometimes you gotta nip things in the bud before they start and not wait till it starts and say, oh, okay, now I'm gonna go do something about it. Same way you're asking us to send a letter now. You know, is the borough okay with the fact that this is gonna come in and cause a lot of other issues? That's all I'm saying, and is there another path which would be less of an issue for your people who live in your borough? Because you're right, everyone wants a bike path, I'm not against a bike path. As a matter of fact, if you read online, and I don't know if this is true or not, if a bike path is within a half a mile of your property value goes up. It's not a bad thing, but you don't want it literally in your backyard. And that's all we're asking is to support us and then to think about the, you know, what's gonna happen with the borough as far as how that's gonna be policed and handled and
Well,
maintained.
we're so far, we're years away from that happening, Chuck.
I understand.
And to give you an answer now would be,
No, I'm just
Just
asking
trying
for
to
your
put-
support, if it is something that you guys, I mean, are you guys gonna address it if you feel that that's a problem? Or are you just gonna wait for the people that live here to fight it? We're asking for your support, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, so I understand you're saying that, but I'm not sure specifically what you're saying, but, I mean, the statement that, you know, are we just gonna wait until something, like, no, we don't do that on anything. But I don't think at this point there is anything other than what we are doing, which is participate in the project, see where this is headed, and then at some point when they've, and it's not like we're not having an influence. When we had that meeting a couple months ago, again, I can't remember the specifics, so please don't, you know, if they talked about a particular, there may have been particular alignments that we talked about in that meeting that they're no longer looking at because of things that we told them.
Right. So there's
So
three trails.
so we do those things. We have been doing that and will continue to do that. You will get our support. You are getting our support.
Okay, so there's 3 trails there so far, as I know. I don't know if it changed or not. Again, there's 2 trails that are less intrusive.
And I
We
think
would ask you guys to support
I
it.
think an important thing to put into place here too is just the simple fact, it sounds like a lot of what you want to have done actually needs to be addressed to the borough council and not to the borough administration here. You know, talking about, well, are you gonna stand up for us, are you gonna that? Those are really in many ways council issues that will be solved when this comes to council vote on, are we gonna support, are we not gonna support? I could be wrong, correct?
You're right, we're nowhere near that point.
Right, agreed.
We're nowhere near that. You know, it's, will you support an idea? Yes.
Yeah, I
Will
mean,
you support an actual, we put this plan together, it's cast, we've got the funding, will you, you know, then it's the time to say yes or no. Right now, will you support an idea? Sure.
But there are 3 paths out there that they are already selected.
Yeah, understood.
So, I mean, you know.
that doesn't mean that any one of those 3 will be ultimately the one that they have done. If there is a path done, that doesn't mean that any one of those
Will be the right
will
one.
be the right one, or, yeah, I mean, that's,
But I mean, we can't stay, I mean, if you were to state that, you could say, well, this path, there's opposition. These ones, that's all we're asking.
Yeah.
For you guys to do at these meetings, I understand the council's not at the meetings. You know, it's-
and I think what I'm saying is, that is being done, that is exactly what Dave is doing when he's participating in the meetings, is saying, you know, this issue's gonna be problematic. What I can say is, we're not trying to, from the staff perspective anyway, because all we're doing at this point is participating and providing input. We're not picking winners and losers here. Because for me to sit in a meeting, and I'm not doing this, but just as an example, for me to sit in a meeting and say, don't go with option A because it goes in front of your house, go with option C because it goes in front of his. That's not what we're gonna do.
Right, I understand.
But
I don't wanna belabor this any longer, but, you know, the path of least resistance for us is the path where it affects the least amount of people who live in the borough.
And again, if they get opposition from the first choice, which affects you, they're obviously, if they get enough pressure from that from a political point, they're gonna go to option B. They're gonna take the one that gives them the least resistance.
Versus the one that's the least cost.
All right, you ready?
Yes. Mine are other safety concerns. There's a property on 103 Dinwiddie. They've had a store grate in front of their house with an orange cone for like 2 years. There's a hole about that big in front of it. And there are 2 elderly people living there. If one of them touches their foot in there, they're gonna fall. I don't understand why Plum is not, all it needs is a little bit of asphalt in it. Why they haven't come out and taken care of this?
Is that municipal authority?
this is the first one hearing about it.
Yeah, is that, I don't know if that the municipal authority handles, well, it's be storm sewer, it's us.
It's storm sewer, it's us.
And the people in the cul-de-sac have expressed concern on Dinwiddie, how you go down the cul-de-sac and come out, but they do not have a stop sign. And the other ones, the other opposite, opposing, they do have a stop sign. But if you come out of Dinwiddie, a lot of times people don't like to stop signs and they almost get hit. So my suggestion is either put, you know, opposing traffic does not stop the stop sign, or put a stop sign there.
So, putting a sign that says opposing traffic does not stop is not an issue. Stop signs,
They said there was one there once, years ago, coming out of it.
they're made, I can't speak to that. What I can tell you is, all traffic control devices, stop signs, yield signs, no turn, one way, all those things, they cannot just simply be installed by any municipality, City of Pittsburgh, City of Philadelphia, Boro. They cannot simply just be installed at the request or recommendation of anyone. Somebody like a transit associate has to be hired to do a traffic study because
They all have to be approved.
it has to meet certain what are referred to as warrants. So it has to meet certain conditions to be able to place a traffic control device in place. That's everything from a street light to like I said, a stop sign, yield sign, one-way sign. All of these things have to meet certain traffic volume requirements, average speed requirements, line of sight requirements, and either a study is done and either the stop sign is warranted or it's not. But the municipalities cannot just simply put up stop signs.
You're right, I
as
understand.
requested. Doesn't mean it hasn't happened.
All right.
I can tell you right now, I think there's I've been here 20 years now. I think when I came here 20 years ago, there was a lot of stop signs in some of the neighborhoods. I thought, there's no way that was warranted.
Right, they just went out and put it up.
People just went up and put them up. But every community did that 30 and 40 and 50 years ago.
Okay, final thing.
We can take a look at the, and I would suggest to you guys too, and I highly recommend, for some of these type of issues that you have these questions about, we have a system, called Boro Connect.
Okay.
If you go online, and if you're not, you're not keen on going online, we have a 1-800 number you can call. And it's basically our complaint system, if you will. So if you go online and you look on our website, you go on the Boro Connect. On our main webpage, it's one of the first things you see. It's a big purple circle. It says Boro Connect on it. I believe it has 2 hands, right, Donna? 2 hands shaking or something like that. If you go online and you put in so it's the intersection, the stop sign, the hole with the cone. If you put that in, that automatically generates a ticket. Those tickets get sent to my assistant, and then they are assigned to some staff member, whether it's chief of police, public works director, planning director, whatever, what have you. And it constantly generates a record of any back and forth. So if you send a ticket,
Someone's gonna look at it.
someone's going to see it. It's going to get assigned to somebody. You're going to get the response confirmation, the ticket number. You're going to get all the information that was, and then you can close the ticket. And then every month, we provide all those tickets to council so that they can see that the residents are calling about or reaching out to us about issues and that they are being addressed. So I highly recommend everybody to use that system because that's the easy. Because you could be telling me this now and I could forget. I could walk out of here and forget.
A paper trail is always better.
Yes, but if you don't like the computer system, if you don't want to go online, we do have a 1-800 number too that you can dial in. You can leave the voicemail message. It will be transferred into one of those Boro Connects and still generate a ticket.
And one of the complaints I get a lot, and I'm sure other council members get it, is I left a message and nobody got back to me. That doesn't mean that the ticket hasn't been generated and some action is in the process. It just says, we don't have time to recall, and I don't mean to be flippant on it, we just don't have the time to return all the calls. The staff is busy. That's why these systems were created, but there is a ticket generated. And he's right, we get to look at it, and if it goes on for a period of time, somebody asks a question, why hasn't this been taken care of? And there's a particular individual that ticket is assigned to, and they have to have the resolution. What did you do about it? And
I will say that anytime I've had a complaint, it's been very responsive. I mean, it's no problems there at all. And thank you for setting up these meetings.
Well, but bear in mind that a lot of these, you know about the issue.
Right.
Because you see it every day.
Right.
A lot of times, we don't know about the issue.
Yeah.
But once we find out, we take action, hence the Boro Connect. Does that answer everything you have?
Yeah.
I have a question. At what point, people who do not take care of their grass cutting, at what point does the borough contact that homeowner or do something about it? I mean, the police drive through, I don't know whose responsibility it is. I guess the police could say, hey, we got this house on whatever, Main Street, or wherever. Why, I don't know, why do we have to have our plan look like crap? Because a few people don't want to get out there and cut their grass.
Do you want to answer that? And then I'll give you my personal thing, but go ahead.
So the police don't enforce, so we have something called a property maintenance code. The council has adopted, and the police don't enforce that. Code enforcement enforces that. We are, within the next few weeks, months, we're actually hiring yet another code enforcement officer just to keep up with the complaints. We have over, 12,000 properties in Columbia. For right now, we have one code enforcement officer, and that code enforcement officer is also responsible for commercial occupancy permits as well. So we're hiring, council's committed to hiring a budget this year, yet another code enforcement officer to focus solely on code enforcement. So with respect to grass, once the ordinance requires the grass in the front yard area to be, and I forget how many hundreds of feet it is from the street, to be under 12 inches. But
All that time.
You're gonna let the grass grow to a foot
Well-
high.
Well, could you imagine if we set it to 4 inches and trying to enforce
Well,
that?
no, but something more reasonable, I mean, a foot high, that's
I
a
mean,
bit.
I don't know.
They get notified.
Yeah, it is pretty standard. I mean, it's just, it would be impossible to monitor something like 8 inches or something like. But what happens practically, and I wanna clarify that this is just front yards. Because we cannot enforce, like, some people have, I think you said you had 50 acres,
Yeah.
30 acres.
Right, where you
And
come
we
from.
can't make you keep all 50 acres
Yeah.
under,
I think
4
it's
inches.
30 feet in.
Yeah.
30 feet.
So what happens is that a letter is sent out. And we're required to do this by law. We send a letter out. That letter is sent regular mail. They're given 30 days, and they have to be given 30 days to correct the situation. If they don't reply to that letter, then I have to send, I have a person to do it, but the borough has to send a certified letter to that property owner and give them another 30 days. And then this is not our process. This is the process that has to be followed for citations in Pennsylvania. Then that person has to be given another 30 days. After that second letter, after 30 days, now we're 60 days in.
So 60, right?
After 60 days, we can file a citation with the magistrate against that person. Now, when we file a citation with the magistrate, and it's getting a little bit better, but if you're like, a few years ago because of COVID, the magistrate's office was 16 months out on things.
So you're in the winter.
Yes. And so then we send a citation to the magistrate, and that person is notified by the magistrate that the borough has cited them.
Then I get another 30 days.
And then they can either fix it or appeal it. If they appeal it, then they set a court date. And if they set a court date, that court date might not be for another 30, 45 days. And then if the magistrate does not uphold our citation and gives them, this happens unfortunately almost every time without fail. When we get in front of the magistrate, the homeowner shows up and says, Your Honor, my son usually cut the grass, but he broke his leg, and we can't, give me another 10 days and I'll get it done.
Then there's no-
Nine times out of 10, that's what happens. They give them X amount of days. So now we're at 90, 100 days. And if they don't do anything, I have to start all over.
And a personal example, frustrations, okay, I understand the frustrations. There's 3 properties that I've been actively involved in. One's on Universal Road. It was a mess and then it burnt down and now there's a tire stack there and everything else. Okay, that's number 1. One on Holton Road, right before you're coming from the Sheets in East Oakmont, before you cross the track, after you cross the tracks, you're sitting on the left-hand
What's the
side.
address where that hole is?
Oh, 103. Dinwiddie.
103?
Yeah. There's a sword right there.
Yeah.
I have come in, gone to code enforcement, and said, do something, we want this done. I've gone to court with them, that's my frustrations. The other day I was in here, and I called the magistrate. One of the secretary, you're not gonna get the magistrate in every court, that's always the excuse. And I said, you issued a bench warrant. I asked for a bench warrant, you issued a bench warrant. I asked our police to serve it, which they were willing to do until they found out police cannot serve bench warrants or citations to the property. Okay, it has to go through a constable. They gave it to the constable. That was 5 weeks ago. I called to say, has it been served? Now, the one on Holton Road, I went to the hearing. And with our code enforcement, she agreed to clean up the property. And she has started that, and she is continuing to clean it up. The other one, these are eyesores. I've had people complain, and I agree with you. You ride down the street and you're selling your house, and people say, great neighborhood. I'm not living across that from that shack. Torn screens, needs a coat of paint on the trim. They're seniors. Actually, they're not. They're younger people that have bought the house and could do the work and just too damn lazy to do the work, all right? You've got frustrations, we get frustrations. I don't mean to be flippant. You pay me $50 a month to be mayor.
What are you doing with all that money?
Then they take taxes out of it.
So the you know, the code enforcement process, and it's not a plum thing, it's in Pennsylvania. The code enforcement process is a very complicated, cumbersome, time-consuming process. But, you know, I have this conversation with people quite often, and I say to them, you know, I know that it's frustrating, and I saw you shaking your head seconds ago. We shake our heads all the time too. Well, sometimes I can tell you stories about the Logan's Ferry School that took us 3 years to get resolved. 3 years. There, remember, there's a school up there in Logan's Ferry that we finally had torn down.
Before you go, that's just right.
But I always tell people, you know, I know it sounds crazy, and I know it's incredibly time-consuming and cumbersome, but think about how bad the alternative would be. Think about how bad it would be if I could just walk out of your house and be like, you need to fix that right now, or I'm going to cite you.
Well, that'd be like an HOA.
Yeah. And the HOA, really, after a while, they go away. And the housing plans are set up.
They have a lot of power though.
Well, they do if they're willing to work it. The people in the neighborhood that sign up for the board are willing to do it. But if they're not, what do you do? You call, and the frustrations begin from your end all the way through.
But I can tell you, even though it is a very lengthy process, we have a computer system that at any given time, I can tell you, if you need one of the information, has this property been cited, how many times have they been cited, where is it, like, we can look right up in the system and say, yep, they've received 3 letters, 2 letters, 1 letter, they've been cited, this is at the magistrate level now. Our system, but we do understand, because for a simple thing like trying to get somebody to cut their grass, it could take, you know, it could be a whole summer and they've never cut their grass. It happens. But I can tell you in all honesty, the staff is just as frustrated about that as you are. I mean, they take a lot of pride in this community as well, and they don't like when they see these people not maintaining their property and not doing what they're required to do. And they take it very personally, the code enforcement staff does. There's one code enforcement officer, but the department, 4 people, soon to be 5. And I think they spend an awful lot of time. We demolish a number of homes every year. It takes a lot of time to get cut, because we have to get approval to be able to do that. We've done, you know, thankfully in Plum, we don't have some of the abandoned housing problems that other communities have. But we've probably done in the last 10 years, we've probably done 30, 40 homes that we've demolished. And in some cases, in some of those cases, we're actually still maintaining it. We're cutting the property, we're cutting the grass. Now we lean that so that if that property is ever sold, the borough can get some of its losses back. So they're very dedicated to doing that. But if you're ever questioning a property, we can tell you, you can call up and ask. You do a right to know request, and we can give you, we will have to redact certain information because you can't have phone numbers and names and things like that. But we can give you exactly how many times they've been cited and where they are in the process.
What is the hearing that council has, where we had on some of those properties?
Those are demolition hearings.
Demolition hearings. Council's been, I've been involved.
One other question. Do we
Well,
have,
if you have people come there to the meeting, we say, we're gonna demo your property. We condemned it, we're gonna demo it. The gentleman came to the meeting. Son was out of town, now the son's back, and he's gonna do it. He says, please, we need 60 days. Council gave him 60 days. I'm sitting here thinking, it's taken you 20 years to get it in that shape. They're gonna clean it up in 60 days. That is not gonna happen. All right, but
you gotta give them.
don't have to, but council did, you know, we don't want to come out and say, we're tearing your house down. It deserves to be turned down, but it's your problem. So we go follow the procedure. He's got 60 days. At the end of that time, if he has not made any progress, like the lady down on Altman, council comes and say, your building's condemned and we're taking it down. That's
Just be careful, he doesn't mean condemned in the legally we're taking it.
No.
Since he means condemned, and it's not
Not
habitable.
habitable.
Right.
Not
It's not
happening.
habitable.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Oh, when are they gonna pave Sheer Road? We're almost getting ready to wind up there.
Is that on the paving list for this year?
Yeah, they already marked the sword rates.
So we always try and get our paving done in the fall.
Oh,
The reason that we do that is because we have a crew or two out as soon as the weather breaks, making all the repairs to all the streets that we're gonna pave in the fall. Some communities have already paved their streets for the year. The paving contractors like us, because we're one of the very few communities that likes to push it off to the fall. So what we'll do is every street that we're gonna pave this year,
you're gonna work on the sword.
we're gonna get the sewers done, we're gonna get catch basins, so we're not paving and then 2 years later cutting up brand new asphalt. So that's why we spend the whole spring and summer making any repairs, pipes and catch basins and manholes, and then we'll pave in the fall.
In Sheer Road, I can complain all the time to Public Works, you're making potholes. That's because the sewer is down, the sewer rate's this far down. Well, they're gonna mill it and bring it down. That's it, you know. First, the other thing I had, and back and forth, some flippancy going back and forth, nothing. You need a better car. Whoa. My truck hits and I don't have a problem, okay? But I understand, there's other ones.
Is Center to Texas Road gonna be done earlier?
New Texas,
New Texas.
is it, yeah, they
New
can finish
Texas
that early?
is not, New Texas is not a borough road.
No, I understand they're not, but maybe, I thought maybe you were kept in the loop on that.
Seems like you're moving pretty quick there.
No,
So
okay.
you would think, I'm probably gonna get in trouble.
Now we're getting,
You would think
getting
that
our
we get- You would think that we get there's a lot of communication and cooperation between, a lot of the different levels, but there really isn't. So, there have been times when we've been surprised about projects that, I live right down the road here, and I passed Scotland Road, the Scotland Road Bridge, this is 10, 12 years ago now. And I was driving to work one day, and the Scotland Road Bridge was closed off. And there was construction equipment and excavators and everything in the vicinity. I had no idea what they were doing there. That's a borough street. Now, the county owns the bridge, ironically, but not the street. But I had no idea that there was a contract awarded to close that bridge down. Nobody, police didn't know, EMS didn't know. I mean, I know that doesn't make you, feel better or sleep good at night knowing that there's not a lot of, but that's one of the things that we always try and work on as local government units is improving that, because there's so much going on everywhere at so many different levels. You got county projects, borough projects, city projects, state projects, even federal projects. And not every, they're awarding contracts, and a lot of these things are done by private contractors, and we always put in our contracts that any impacted property owner must be personally notified as part of our projects. And when we do projects, a lot of times we'll have somebody go out and talk with you and explain to you what we're doing and how long you're going to be impacted. But when you have, everybody jokes about the construction season in the Pittsburgh area.
Oh, it's everywhere.
When you have all these contracts going on, it's really hard for everybody to keep everything, keep everybody in the know. Now they do send us out emails, 3 months ago, 4 months ago, and say, oh, by the way, we're going to be doing this project on New Texas Road. This project specifically, they actually have been pretty good about notifying us, but it really just depends a lot on the people involved, at what level they're involved in, and the contractors themselves. I don't have any updates on that project. That doesn't mean I won't get one at some point, but I don't have any at this point.
I'll give you an example on Leechburg Road. I had a residence call that there's a landslide. The road hasn't been affected yet, but it's going to. I reported it. It was turned into the state. And the state come back and said, basically, thank you, we'll get to it. All right, look down at, when you said Dinwiddie, look at Milltown.
Oh,
Right.
How long has that been closed? 5, 6 years now?
no, actually, it's open.
Well, one lane.
One lane, yeah.
One lane, but I mean, the other, they got the
Yes.
Jersey barriers up and the
Yes.
2 stop signs.
Right.
So when are you gonna fix that? That's a state road.
That's
And
actually
speaking
on a
of that
schedule.
road,
That's actually on the schedule. schedule, I seen it, PennDOT or whatever.
Yeah,
It's supposed to be done by November.
All right, by the time they get that landslide we spoke about, which if the road will collapse, it'll be down to one lane, all right? But I hit a pothole and blew a tire. It was on, I called the state, thank you very much for reporting it. I even put in the mayor. And they got back and said, thank you very much for reporting it. And I put a claim in to get my new tire. It didn't happen. But they got back to me and they said, that's not our pothole. What the heck? They did utility work on the side. It was a pole. They did some utility work. And of course, they didn't do it correctly and it had gone into the roadway. That's the utilities. I blew that tire New Year's Eve, because I was on the way to a dinner with friends. New Year's Eve. They fixed it in April. Okay? End of story. Anything on the other one?
Wait, speaking about Milltown, and I know we've talked about speed at one of the other meetings. What can be done about the speeding when you're coming from Milltown to Kerr? People can't even stay in their own lane because they're coming so fast.
I drive
And the speeding through the ramparts. We talked about the school buses, how they were speeding. Well, the school buses did slow down, but the speeding, and again, it's the residents, it's horrendous. What can we do?
Well,
What can be done?
it's all enforcement. I mean, it's putting up, the speed signs, the speed trailers to notify people. It's getting, cars out there to perform fast car. It's really the only way to curb speeding is enforcement. The problem is that it's not it's never a one and done thing. You can't just write tickets for a month and then be done with it because people will just go back to their old habits. But it's a constant problem that we have, that every community has everywhere in all the communities, is that, so everybody knows how big Plum is, right? It's 30 square miles. It's the largest borough in the state. And we have over 30,000 people, 12,000 properties. How many cops do you think we have out on a daily basis at any given time?
10 or 12?
4 on shift.
4.
I'm glad you mentioned it at that time, because I was thinking relative to their situation about cameras. So they now, for cars, they now have a camera system where, do you know if Plum has any,
What kind of camera system?
where, kind of like when you put the signs out, the speed signs, well, there's actual camera systems that are out there and you get caught. Somehow, I know they're using it in Phoenix area, in a lot of the bigger cities. And somehow it determines that you were speeding and then it automatically triggers
So the speed signs that I'm referencing, they have cameras in them. I can show you the pictures of the people that are speeding, and it does register their speed. In Pennsylvania, we cannot write a ticket based on that.
And they only take a front shot.
Well,
There's no license plate on it.
Yeah, we could resolve, that's a technology thing, that can be
But
resolved.
license
But the
plate-
bottom line is that we don't have the legal authority to write a ticket based on that yet. Other states permit it, Pennsylvania does not right now.
And then in your case, trail.
But that would be, you're right, that would be a good.
Yeah, because you said witnessed, needs to be witnessed. Now, a trail cam, would that
I have this,
suffice?
one got stolen.
We were also told too that you can't really enforce it either. And another thing with trail cams, which she said one was stolen, usually people that are riding, quads or dirt bikes or whatever, have helmets and stuff on it, you can't.
Can't identify them.
You can say, yeah, that's my bike, but that wasn't me,
Well, it's the quality of the camera, and so we have cameras at our parks, and specifically at Larry Mills Park, we have a big problem with dirt bikes and quads.
With the races that are going on.
And And we've
The
used,
plum does, by the
we've
way?
used film footage of those actors at the magistrate's level. We have.
Oh, you have?
Yeah, you know, it's about
Did
building
you
a
get
case.
cases?
It's about building a case, yeah,
Okay.
but it's difficult because for that reason you just explained, and it's not impossible. But it's about the quality of the camera. Can the camera zoom in? Can you get a face? You know, there's other features. You know, I have tattoos. If you saw me without a shirt on, and even if I had a helmet on, you might be able to identify the tattoos, right?
Yeah.
It's.
So there's ways to do it, but it's not easy, but it's not impossible either. Because we've done it. We have cameras in our parks, and we've used those cameras at the magistrate level to have people pay for damages that they've caused.
And we put the speed radar signs up, and give your mileage. And every month, at the council meeting, I get the report from the chief, and he gives me the fastest ones. Right? And said Thursday, Sunday, he decided to do 60 on New Texas Road.
Are you allowed to post the pictures on, you know, like the Boro television page, you know, like
If
or
we-
website? Are
I
you,
don't
I don't
know.
know legally if you're allowed to.
I don't know, but if we do, you're gonna see a white car.
I'd have to blur out the license plate, but yeah, you can do the picture.
But I mean, we
You
don't,
can do a photo of the car.
yeah, we get a photo of the car, it's a white car.
Yeah.
Okay,
A lot of people wouldn't care.
and I've had people.
And it might not be a Plum Boro.
Some people actually might take pride in that.
Right, that's true. I remember Jay Leno saying he used to speed on the Pennsylvania Turnpike because they had the fines listed, and he's like, oh, I can afford that, so.
Well, I've had people send me a letter, saying, I was at Sheets, reference one particular, I was at Sheets and heard a bunch of young people sitting around the table, and they were bragging about, there's a radar sign, to see how fast they could go by it, to see what they could clock, and then go around the block and come by it again. And the gentleman that sent me the letter, if you send me a letter or a note and an email, and you don't sign it, you're gonna get nothing from me. Because if you don't think enough to sign it, I'm not gonna do anything. But this gentleman did sign, okay, put his name down. And I got back to him, and I said, I can't stop idiots. He said, well, then don't put the radar sign up. But we get calls from residents in the area about speeding, so then we put the sign up, and we track that, and eventually, we're gonna build a history. There'll be a police officer sitting there, and you're gonna get nailed.
Well, the speed signs do a number of things for enforcement. And so we have a rather large speed trailer now. You've probably seen that thing. It's a self-contained trailer.
Yeah.
It's a very large one. But we also have the ones that look like speed limit signs. And you probably don't even know they're up until it'll show you digitally what your speed is, right? And they're only this big, and we can mount. They're battery operated. We can mount them in a lot of places. The speed signs do two things for us. First of all, they identify for most of the motorists, not the people that are the ones the mayor's talking about, but they identify for most motorists. If you're driving through your plan and you're not paying attention, and all of a sudden you see on that thing that says you're doing 45, you go. Hopefully, most people go, oh my God, I need to slow down. So there is some element of self-regulation when they see those numbers. The other thing that those signs do for us is they're constantly gathering information. Average speed, number of vehicles. So they, over the years since we've had them, and we have a number of them, they've enabled us to develop a database so we know where our most problem areas are. So we're able to target those areas. But if there's an area that hasn't been identified to us previously, because this has only been in like the last 5 years or so, 5 or 7 years that we've had, and we keep buying more of these signs so we can implement them, deploy them in multiple locations. But we do now have data on, we can pinpoint where some of our biggest speeding problems are. And the problem specifically with Milltown and Kerr is there's really no good place to do enforcement for us.
There's no driveway.
It's really difficult to, see, because we're not allowed to use radar in Pennsylvania still. We're the only state in the whole country that doesn't allow local municipalities to use radar. We still have to use VASCAR, and VASCAR requires a lot of space to do it properly. And so those areas where it's like, where you're talking about, there's other areas in many other communities as well where it's just almost impossible to do speed enforcement, and people know that. they know that there's never gonna be a cop there. Because everybody, well, I shouldn't say everybody, but a lot of people know that Pennsylvania is not allowed to use radar, they have to use VASCAR, and they know to look for the lines. And if you don't see lines there, you know there's no, and they do understand where they can and cannot speed, unfortunately.
And I had, I came home one day, I live on Winchester, came home one day and there's a radar sign right on the other side of the street. So I called the chief, I said, where'd you put the sign up? He says, well, your name gave the person's name down there, request for the sign for speeders. Happened to see her outside, and I said, so, why'd you use, people go up and down here so fast? I said, it's no outlet. It has to be somebody on this street. She said, well, yeah, I know. And I said, so why don't you say something to her about, hey, slow down? Well, I don't want to cause a problem with my neighbor, but you want me to cause a problem. Okay? But she doesn't. I said, well, you know who they are. Why don't you stand out there flag down and say, come on, kids play. They speed up our end of the street, but down where they live, where all the kids are, they don't speed because their kids are there. But they don't care. It's people.
So we do try to accommodate to the extent that we can, request to put those speed signs out when we get them. And you can use that same Boro Connect form to request a speed sign or a speed trailer in a specific area. And we will make every effort to get it out there. The problem is that there's a waiting list for them. You know what I mean? Like everybody's requesting them, and so we're trying to deploy them. And we don't just deploy them for a day because that doesn't give us that doesn't have any impact. So you can make that request to have it at whatever intersection you think it's necessary. We won't question that. If you think it should be at this intersection, we won't question and say no. We'll put it out there. The only caveat is that there's a waiting list. So many people are requesting them right now. We only have so many that it might be September before I get it out there. But we will get it. We will do it. But you can use that system to request it.
Are there any other questions? You have questions? Okay. Before we wrap this up, if there's no other questions, speed radar sign out in front of my house. Harry did something, that's hard to believe, but Harry did something stupid.
Oh, no.
The kids are out there on their bikes and skates. I said, hey guys, I'll pay you $20 if anybody can get over 20 miles an hour on that sign. Stupid, right? These kids were out there all day on scooters, on those inline skates, on their bikes, going up and down. One got it up to 16 or 17. Then they started on the top of the hill. And they're pumping down that hill to get as much speed as possible. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this is stupid, because if he loses it and he's all straightened up and that, and this goes home and his mother's going to say, why did you do that? He said, well, the mayor offered me $20. Stupid.
Yeah.
So I had to go out and say, guys, the bet's off. The bet's off. But they spent hours up and down trying to beat that sign.
Oh, yeah.
If there is nothing else, we're going to wrap this up.
Yeah, we're wrapping up.
Anything? Well, thank you for coming. We really appreciate that. If you put on there, by the way, when you sign up for this, if you kind of let us know, then we can get, and I want to eventually get the, like the Director of Public Works, the Chief of Police to come and answer questions that are specific to, you know, traffic safety or something like that. And maybe we can do something about putting, when we advertise coffee with the mayor or manager, that we'll have a guest, the Public Works or the chief, not saying that's the only questions that are going to be asked. Anybody can come in and ask any question. However, we're going to have somebody here with expertise to address very specific questions. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, again, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
We do appreciate it. Please, there's coffee and some rolls. I'm not taking them down to the police because they never invite me down.